Slide film is not the go-to stock for most people in 2022, but was it ever the go-to stock? If so, what was it used for and how was it shot? In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of slide film and my recent experience shooting a roll of Ektachrome 64T that expired almost 2 decades ago. I'm Lucy Lumen and this is my analog adventure. So Ektachrome is the brand name that Kodak have used since the 1940s to describe what we would call slide film or color transparency film. It was widely used by professionals and consumers and was available in higher speeds than films like Kodachrome, which made it a lot more versatile. Speaking of Kodachrome, Kodak's other famous slide film, notably favored by my favorite photographer of all time, William Eggleston, Ektachrome gained popularity in the market due to its less technically intricate developing process that could be handled by smaller labs or even home developers, whereas Kodachrome was the choice of the hardcore professionals with access to pro labs. Some of you may already know this, but early color negative film isn't what it was today, and a lot of professionals or people who were shooting for magazines were using either black and white or slide film. With the rapid rise of digital photography, through the early decades of the 2000s, we saw variations of Ektachrome be discontinued. And then by 2013, Kodak had tragically ceased all production of any of the Ektachrome films. For the next 5 years, photographers who wanted those rich colors of slide film had to rely on what they could find in the secondhand market or turn to expired films. Then, almost out of nowhere, in 2018, Kodak announced the re-release of Ektachrome in 35mm, Super 8 and 16mm motion picture film. So for the most part, as you can imagine, most films are shot on color negative film as it's a lot easier to work with. But there are a few examples of Ektachrome in Hollywood, and surprisingly, some of them have been cross-processed. Movies like Three Kings and Inside Man used cross-processing because they wanted to get that look. A lesser-known film that also used Ektachrome is a little indie flick called Buffalo 66, directed by Vincent Gallo. If you listened to my latest podcast episode with Jonathan Benseman, who is an amazing photographer, DP and director, you will have heard us chat a little bit about this film. Podcast is linked below if you want to have a listen. This movie is one of my favorites, and that's due to the fact that it visually just looks so different to any other movie I've seen before. I started researching how this movie was shot and why Gallo chose to use Ektachrome. I found some interesting program notes from DP Robbie Ryan, who chose Buffalo 66 to screen at a special event for BAFTA. Here's a few quotes from those program notes that I think are really interesting. The reason I chose to show this print in the cinema today is because you'll more than likely never see another film put to print this way again. It was shot on 35mm reversal stock, which has now been discontinued. This particular stock is very difficult to shoot on because in processing it is unpredictable and unstable. I found it really interesting how confidently Robbie is saying that this is the last time we will see a film shot on reversal stock. Fast forward to 2022 and we're seeing huge networks like HBO choose to shoot an entirety of a season of a really popular show all on reversal stock. Obviously, I'm talking about the show Euphoria, which I'm sure you're all aware of. This really piqued the interest of a lot of film photographers and I think will pave the way for other directors to maybe look at using reversal stocks, if not just using color negative film. I think if you told people at the screening of Buffalo 66 that this would be a reality in 2022, they just wouldn't have believed you. This is a big step in the direction towards keeping film alive, and I think that Ektachrome's had a real boost since Euphoria has been shot on that film. Reversal film stock is unique, and indeed it is. Made even more unique by the way that Buffalo 66 was flashed in post-processing to remove a lot of the saturation that slide film has and create kind of this like bleached bypass look. Still remaining though are expertly placed pops of color like the red boots that Gallo wears through the entirety of the film. There are scenes where they're a real focus. They act nicely against these muted blues of Christina Ricci's costume and makeup, and just create a vibe that I've never seen in a film before. Moving on to the role that I recently shot, but before we do that, I wanted to let you all know that I now have a weekly newsletter through Substack. I will link it below if you want to sign up. It'll be in your inbox every Friday, and it's just a little note on things I'm loving, being inspired by, or want to recommend to you guys. So definitely sign up. It is free and it will be in your inbox every Friday. Ektachrome 64T is a tungsten balanced film, same as 800T Cine-Stills film. This film has an unusual ISO of 64, which is pretty slow, and I don't think I've ever shot a film at that ISO before. I had seen some examples of this film being cross-processed by my good friend Matthew Murray of Matt Loves Cameras, who gifted me this roll, and when I saw his shots I was really impressed. To be completely honest, I don't really love the look of expired film. I often find it to be too grainy and kind of murky looking, and I struggle to invest in that and the developing costs and then get shots back that I'm like not really that keen on. But seeing Matt's roll cross-processed, I was just in love with how it looked, so I was really keen to try it. I did sit on this roll for a while as I wasn't really sure if I would ever get the chance to shoot a film like this again, and that always gives me film anxiety, and I kind of just worry about what I'm going to use it for. I was recently gifted this Yashika T4, which is like the most insanely nice present anybody has ever given me, and I thought it would be fun to see what a 20-year-old expired tungsten balanced film would look like in a point and shoot with the in-camera flash at night. Because why not? I did shoot some of this roll during the day though, but I feel like I went pretty rogue with the combo of things that was going on here. The grain is definitely prominent here, but in a really cool way that I'm liking. Some of the shots are underexposed, but it's creating this mood and depth, but still allowing the crazy vibrant colors to come through and then fall away in the shadows. Even the portraits that my partner took, I really love those. I have seen some results from slide film where there's quite a heavy green cast that can kind of make people look a bit ill. But I feel like in this, there's a little bit of that, but it's got a cool kind of like 90s music video vibe, which I'm a huge fan of. This isn't my first time cross-processing slide film. I did the same thing with a roll of Velvia 50 a couple of years ago, as I shot it all and intended to get it processed in E6 chemicals, but I was struggling to find a local lab that could do that, and I thought, hey, why not just cross-process it, as it'll be cheaper and easier. I shot this roll in my Nikon F80 and wasn't really sure what to expect. I do really love the results. It's definitely a lot crazier looking than the Ektachrome roll, but I have heard that Velvia gives kind of like the strongest results when you cross-process it. I would say the color shift is way more prominent in the Velvia than it is in the Ektachrome, but I love the shots of me with the red lipstick on. They kind of look really old Hollywood, and I love this shot of the lemons in the fridge with the flash. Just really popping. If you are looking for a reason to cross-process film, you should definitely check out Matt Murray's X Pro competition. It has been extended until September 18th. All the details are on his website. Lux and I will definitely be entering some of our shots from this Ektachrome roll, so you still have time to get yourself a roll, get it cross-processed, and enter the competition. If you have ever wanted to shoot slide film, but you're like me, where you're kind of a little bit anxious about it, or you don't really want to spend the money on getting it developed, or you can't find somewhere to develop it in your local area, then cross-processing is a great way to kind of just like remove the barriers around slide film and just give it a go and have some fun. The 90s was a really experimental time for music videos, as film was still in its heyday, and I think many of those music videos stand the test of time, the same way classic movies like Blade Runner just haven't aged in the special effects and set areas, the way like that Mummy movie looks really bad now. I digress though. I take a lot of inspiration from music videos, and the 90s is a great time to look back on. Cherub Rock by the Smashing Pumpkins, which was directed in a pretty indie kind of lo-fi way on Super 8 and then developed in the director's bathtub, kind of not following the rules, and then the film was scratched to give it this like really cool kind of look, and you can't really tell what's going on, but it kind of suits like the time and the Smashing Pumpkins sort of aesthetic. I think ways of shooting like this really embody that kind of like lomography ethos of just like getting out and shooting and having fun and being experimental. There are heaps of other music videos from that time that I can't pinpoint whether or not they were actually cross-processed, but they kind of have that sort of look to them. Even things like Heart-Shaped Box, which was shot on color, then reversed to black and white, and then like hand tinted afterwards. Music videos like the Pixies' Debaser kind of have that sort of cross-processed, real lo-fi film, just like we don't really care and we kind of want things to look a little bit shitty, which I'm a big fan of. I think looking at Ektachrome and its place in history versus where we are now, it's a pretty impressive comeback. Much like the comeback of film itself and Kodak as a company. If HBO shows like Euphoria are being shot on film, then I dare say we will see more of this in the coming years from directors. So get yourself some slide film and have a go. It doesn't really matter what you shoot either, because cross-processing will give it this really cool, fun, crazy, bold colors kind of look, so anything you shoot will look awesome. Cross-processing, at the very least, will make your work stand out, so why not grab a roll and try it? I have recently made a Buy Me a Coffee page, so anybody who wants to support the channel and the podcast and everything else I do, you can show your support by buying me a coffee and keep me creating free content for you to enjoy.